All right, aft fuselage, baggage compartment, still in the cabin. We got some work to do there. The first thing that we have to do, we have these ribs. We've got to get them fit inside there. So I'm going to first remove the blue plastic. We'll go Cleco them in place. It took me a while to get it right. It's pretty cool. Alright, and with that I am done Clecoing things onto this, and now it's time to start removing pieces. While we do that, I have to match drill anything that hasn't been match drilled. Right now is literally the last chance that we get to address the fit and finish of anything while it's still together. From there, we're pulling it apart and we're getting ready to rivet it. And if I don't plan ahead, I'm going to wind up painting myself or riveting myself into a corner. If I later get it Clecoed together and realize that something has been prepped wrong, it can mean a lot of work and a lot of rework, and I want to try to avoid that. Now, I know what you might be thinking, Ryan, it's a kit, there's instructions, there's plans, and yeah, that's true. The instructions are summed up into a few tidy, short paragraphs, and if you think that encompasses all the work or details all the work that needs to be done, it simply doesn't. It can't. The plans are a great reference to see how these things are done, but not every hole is spelled out. So we really do have to go through, make notes, be careful, double, triple, quadruple check that we've done everything and that we know how it's going to be finished months down the road. Basically, the next month or two of my life is essentially getting this thing ready to rivet together and then riveting it together, making all the preparations so that it fits right, straight, true, and perfect, or as close to perfect as possible when I go to finish this off. Could get easily overwhelmed just by not knowing where to start. Right now, I just have a list of tasks tickling around in my head that I've been putting off for a while. I'm gonna start doing some of those. However, I can't work from memory alone, so I will sit down with the instructions and the plans and make a master punch list as I move through this and kind of go over the airplane and make sure that I've got everything. Well, my progress has once again been slowed by confusing instructions. This is the spot where the fuel tank attach bracket will go. Essentially the leading edge of the wing, and thus the fuel tank comes to right here, and we need something to hold all that weight into the structure of the fuselage. Enter the fuel tank attach bracket. That's a piece, we've seen it before, it goes right here, and on the inside of the plane we have this bracket and some shims. On one spot of the instructions it says go ahead and put a rivet here, countersink to suit. On another spot in the instructions it says that I actually need to widen this hole and thus this hole to accommodate a screw and nut system. And that means that I'm actually going to have to then countersink these skins to make way for a countersunk head screw to keep it flush. I've seen it done both ways in my internet research, and all those planes are still flying. I think it's really up to me. There seems to be more documentation in the instructions that lead me to think that it needs a screw bolt washer, so I'm going to go that route. So we're going to reattach this to the inside, and I'm going to go ahead and widen this out and countersink the skins and move on. There goes about a half an hour. So inside here there are areas that need to be drilled out where we've got like 3, 4, I think in some instances maybe even 5 pieces of aluminum all coming together. Now I want to make sure that I have edge distance on all those, that they're all sitting flush, and that my hole will punch through, not skewed in any one way or another. That way when I drive a rivet, it's working like it ought to be. These rivets in particular I'm worried about. Where this bend takes place, there's flanges where the side skin kind of flays out. And so when I remove this cleco to drill, there's no other support from the surrounding clecos to help keep that tab pulled up against the rest of the skins here. So I'm going to want to make sure that they're pre-bent so that we have nice flush tabs so I can hopefully just punch a hole right through. If it's angled out like this, I'm going to wind up with a crooked drill hole going through there, or worst case, wind up even just pushing it further out and not getting a drill hole at all. You might be thinking, Ryan, for disassembling this thing, you sure are adding a lot of clecos. And yeah, more than expected. But there is a lot to tie together during this last finishing process. However, I think I've got it all. I think I've got everything match drilled. I think I've got all the little nooks and crannies and nuances addressed. Now, I'm sure I'm gonna find a few things as I disassemble that I might have to quickly cobble something back together and hit, but for the most part, we're there. So I'm gonna start removing pieces. It only stands to reason that the last piece on should be probably the first piece off, which is this lower front skin. Except I have some more work to do. That's right, we made it all the way to now before I realized I still have some items to hit before we can continue with this assembly. There are 5 rivet holes here that need to be set double flush. Now, if you recall, I dealt with some other holes on this same line that need to be installed double flush. In fact, they're right over here where the floor stiffeners run. Even though we need to do essentially the same thing to these holes as we do to these holes, the plans note them incredibly different, and it's a little confusing. The plans explicitly say to countersink the skin under here for these ones, meaning this top skin will be dimpled. However, on these ones, I think the only way to go about it is to countersink where I'm at now, and then set them double flush on the inside as well. I don't know, I'm confused. All I know is I'm fairly certain that if I set my countersink to a final depth for a flush rivet here and hit these 5 holes on each side, I should be okay. It's pieces like these that I am the most concerned about getting mixed up. Often when a part comes from Vans and it's marked R or L, in fact almost all the times if it's marked R or L, that's because it's inherently different and it was formed as a right or a left. And for our sake, it doesn't really matter to continue that labeling of right or left because it's only going to fit on the right or left. However, pieces like this that I've created from scratch and then match drilled to other parts that I've created from scratch can certainly be used on the right or left, but they won't fit because there's inevitably going to be a few hundredths difference where these holes land, and I'll be stuck trying to figure out why this piece won't fit on that side for the longest time before I realize. Widen this up to 5/8 for the rudder cable. I never did it when installing it. I'm gonna hit it now. It's on a list I have over there, but the timing works out here. Easy peasy. And same thing on this one. Just needs to go out to 5/8 for the rudder cable. The separation of the rear fuselage, the aft fuselage, and the center section did not go as planned. I had it supported on a few pieces. The idea was I was going to get everything unclecoed and then slowly lift it down and onto the sawhorse from within. Unfortunately, my support, one of them gave way prematurely, and I wound up holding this thing for probably about 20 minutes as I tried to wrestle with it and figure out how I could safely put it down. The problem is it's surrounded on 3 sides with an overhang of skin, and so you can't just simply rest it on that skin. That skin will bend under the weight, and so I was supporting the weight while I sat there and tried to weigh my options and regain some strength so I could flip it and put it down like I had planned. Did not go well. Luckily, there's no damage to anything. I don't know how I walked away without having at least a little bit of damage or bending of skins, but everything looks fine. So I'll thank my lucky stars on that one and keep moving forward. We got to remove the longerons, and then what I'm going to do is get this place all cleaned up and get parts organized so that I can go through my list and see what needs to happen to each one. That fucking sucked. Alright, I cleaned up the garage. I've pushed everything far to the back and being careful to get it blocked up sturdy this time. I've been staring at heaps of parts and not really knowing where to start. That's a common, familiar feeling on this project. I do know that there's a part I'm dreading, and that's these guys. Not so much all of the countersinking. While that's going to be tedious, painting these is problematic to say the least in this garage. They will not fit sideways. They won't even come close to fitting in my spray booth. So the only thing that I could think of is I'm going to create a makeshift spray booth around these themselves. Now if we remember, I only have to paint half at a time, the forward half being white, the aft half being the Axo green. That's helpful, but it's still a pain. And so I'm going to start by countersinking, prepping these, and then I'm going to build a spray booth right here in the garage. Rah, 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 rah. You're so tough. You're so tough. What are you doing? You've worked yourself into a tizzy again. That is the first longeron. So we're hitting just about every single one of these. There are, though, be careful, there are some holes that aren't going to get countersunk. There's certain bulkheads and stiffeners that when they come up and meet this, you're going to use a universal head rivet, which means no countersinking. And those, I just passed one up right here. Not every single thing gets countersunk. You don't want to go too much on autopilot, but it is, I'd say 99% of them got a countersink. I think we're probably somewhere around 300-400. So we got a countersink on one side. We do still have to deburr the other side, which is what I'm doing now. All right, now that I've successfully turned my garage into a Dexter kill room, I'm ready to continue to set up the priming area. I just need to run some air hoses in there. Now, there's no ventilation like there is with my other spray booth, but the very limited amount of primer that I'm using and being able to just kind of flush it out in between batches, I think I'll be okay. Of course, I'll still wear a mask and all that. But in reality, I'm just trying to get 2 coats on one side, 1 coat on the other, and then get these pieces out of here. Couple notes. I prepped the front. I was going to paint the front, but of course that white primer takes 2 coats and a long time to dry. That would mean that I can't paint the back for probably 2 days. So I went ahead, I flipped both these around, an arduous task. I've prepped the back now. We'll get these painted, and then within a couple hours I should be able to flip them around and paint the fronts. Overall, I'll get through this much quicker. Not great is how I would explain that experience. The paint sticking to the boots made it extremely difficult. And then right at the end, part of the drop cloth blew into one of the longerons and it stuck to it. And so right at the tip, it's all messed up. I don't know whether I'm gonna fix it or realize that it's tucked underneath the panel where you'll never see it. I guess I'll have to take a look at it, engage my energy and see how much I have. Otherwise, the finish is mediocre. I didn't really get that high gloss I was looking for. I thought it was laying down great, but viewing it now, a day later, it's a little matte, it's a little satin, but I do think it'll work. You know, in general, I thought this would be like an afternoon endeavor, and I'm now at the better part of 2 days. And they're not turning out exactly how I had planned. And I think really the issues I'm facing is the limited space in here. But for what it is, I think they'll probably work. I'm a little exhausted, so I'm going to set them aside for now and then maybe come back and take a look at them with a fresh mind. And it's been a week, and the more I stare at them, the more I think, they're going to be okay. They're not perfect, but let's face it, not much on this plane is. But it's all pretty darn good if you ask me. We're on the tail end of another episode, and some of this was just some brutal work, and that's what we have ahead of us for a little bit, although I think I got the worst of it out of the way, which was my plan. Coming up, there is a lot more countersinking, dimpling, priming, prepping, all of the fun stuff that we have to do in order to get ourselves ready to put this thing together. But soon here, I'm going to wind up with a fuselage that's riveted together that we can sit on its belly and I can sit inside of. I can't wait for you to join me for that. We're working towards that stage over the next couple of weeks, and it'll be here before you know it on Ryan Flies.